All right, should be live, and you can see me in the chat. Tell me where you are from, what city, what state, where do you live? Is there like a little bit of lag or something? Cool. Looks like you can hear me. You don't need to plug anything in. I've got things plugged in on my end. So San Antonio, some of you guys before said you're from 8th period. Kind of funny. Okay, so a bit of lag if you're watching on a phone. If you watch on a desktop, the lag isn't quite there as much. Possible there's a little bit. But I'm going to introduce myself in just a second and share my screen. Here we go. All right. All right, my friends. So this is Fiveable. My name is Amanda. For those of you who have not yet come to a live event with Fiveable, basically what we do is we teach live sessions every week. One of you guys said this is like YouTube for people who want to learn. It's kind of what it is, right? So we've got teachers that go live every week and explain the concepts that you need to pass, in this case, AP Human Geography. And so I'm live every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're talking through all the concepts throughout the whole year until we get to May. And then in May, we go a lot more often. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about population growth and decline. And so I'm curious of where you guys are in your classes. Are you, oh, by the way, just like a quick, actually, let me ask you now, and then I'll explain the system. In the chat, if you could just type in, like, what are you learning about in class right now, like this week? Are you on population? Are you talking about have you talked about the DTM yet? Are you talking about something else? Migrations, maybe. So whatever you're learning in AP Human Geo, type it into the chat, and don't say like chapter 1, and don't say nothing. You're learning something. So like, what is it that you're focused on? What are you reading about? What are you supposed to be focused on? Okay, and so just so that you know how the rest of this works, the chat is there. If the chat is distracting for you, you can minimize it. There's a little, when you like put your mouse over it, there's a little minimize button. On the bottom, there's a little thing where it says ask a question, and at any time you can ask a question there. Keep your questions focused on this topic. Anything else, I'll go through them at the end, but I won't be able to spend too long discussing other things. And, be specific about what you want to know. So don't just say, like, can you please explain everything? Because, that's a lot. So definitely ask questions at any point. I'm going to kind of chug through things. Sometimes I'll ask you guys questions, but I'm here for you, right? So I want to make sure that you understand how everything you need. Santiago, I would suggest refreshing if it's lagging. So, okay, perfect. So it looks like most of you guys are starting this unit talking about population, talking about the DTM, and the ETM, the epidemiological transition, talking about population growth. Perfect. Okay, so, all right, so I'm going to jump in. So like I said, I'm Amanda. I am a teacher. I also founded Fiveable. You can find me anywhere on the internet at Think Fiveable, especially on YouTube. That's a good place to find me. There's lots of videos up there. In the next few weeks, I think it seems like I've got it pretty good lined up with where you guys are. Next Monday, we're going to talk about migrations. The Monday after that, I'm going to do like a whole review of Unit 2, because that's right around when you would have a test for Unit 2. And then we'll jump into culture. So we'll talk about diffusion of culture and how culture spread. So last week, I talked about population, like distribution. Where are people? What are the demographic makeup of different populations? And we specifically talked about population pyramids. And that replay is available, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So this is the map that I showed. We've got, I saw today, it was like, I think it's like 7.5 billion people in this in the world, and this is where they live, right? So this is, you can see the dots of where they are. And so last week we talked about where they are. This week we're talking more about how population grows and shrinks and what the deal is with that. And I'm actually going to show you like 6 minutes of one of my all-time favorite documentaries. It's just on YouTube, and I'll send the link so you can watch the rest of it. But in terms of population and understanding how it works, this is like the best resource that you could possibly have. And so this is kind of like an ode to, his name is Hans Rosling. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Hans Rosling, I think he died like last year, the year before. So this is kind of, this entire session is dedicated to him, because everything I know about population is from Hans Rosling. So, okay. All right. So this is where people are in the world. This is just like the world population over time. So it's been pretty dramatic, right? The last 200 years. I mean, it's insane. You can see like for most of human history, and just to be clear, this map is not showing all of human history. This is just showing all the way from the year 0, which, by the way, there was no year 0, but this is just showing the last 2018 years. So from the beginning all the way up until 1700, there's almost no population growth. You know, let me just presenter. Here we go. That's a little better. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, so you can see here, all the way up until 1700, there's almost no population growth. And then it just goes crazy, right? So then we just have a huge spike in population, and it's just increasing. We're about here right now, right? Here's where we are, 7.5 billion, 2018. And you can see the projections are just keep on going. And this is what stresses a lot of people out, because you look at this and you're like, how are we going to be able to manage this? How can we, as human society, keep people alive if there's this many people, right? And so this is kind of what this entire unit is about. It's like there's all these people. How do we sustain all these people? What do different countries look like when there are this many people, and so on. Let's see. Okay, so I want to show you this clip right now. A lot of times, one of the biggest misconceptions about population growth is that population increases just because people have more babies. And that's not true. So it's not like that's the difference here, right? Like, what is it that happens here? Why after 1700 does it spike up so much? And why has it continued to increase? Like, what do you know so far? What is it? You know, some of you guys have said people were dying before. Okay, but like, why? Why does it go up? What's the reason? And is there an end in sight? Like, what happens? Are we just going to continue? Is our population just going to continue to grow, or is there some sort of curb on it? Is there something that will stop it? And yeah, you guys have it down, right? So Austin got to it first, but the rest of you guys are right as well. The Industrial Revolution is the reason why it happens. And the population will increase globally because of the Industrial Revolution and because of better medicine. But then beyond that, like, what's the reason for all of this growth? Why does it happen? And so let me show you just about like 5 minutes of this. And I'm going to actually just send you guys the link right now. And I totally recommend, if you have not watched this documentary, it's like an hour long, or 58 minutes. And it's like, it really will help you understand. Let's see. Hang on. It'll really help you understand. Oh, no. Of course, I just did that. It'll really help you understand what's going on here and what you need to understand with population. So in this clip, he's going to explain 2 things. He's going to explain, one, why our population has increased, like the specific reasons, and not just industrialization. And he's going to tell you, when you have the population increasing all the way up here, what's happening with that, especially in the last century, right? So industrialization explains this, but what the heck happened here? What's happened in the last century that has promoted all of this growth and will continue to grow? And what, why? Who are those people? So let's watch.
Child survival drives everything. Let's go back into history. Why did the world population grow so slowly before 1800? Well, throughout history, all historical records show us that on average, 2 parents got more or less 6 children. But that looks as a very fast population growth. So why didn't it grow? Because 1, 2, 3, 4 of the children died before growing up to become parents themselves. People in the past never lived in ecological balance with nature. They died in ecological balance with nature. It was utterly tragic. But with the Industrial Revolution, this changed. Better wages, more food, tapped water, better sanitation, so medical advances, So why did then, from all these advances, why did population grow? Was it because they got more children? No. 1963.
All right. Is the lag like super bad? Like bad enough that you can't even watch it? Give me a 1 in the chat if it's like not worth watching it this way because it's too much. Okay. All right. So, all right, that's fine. So let me just explain it then. I haven't tried to like show a video on this, so I wasn't sure how well it was going to work. But basically, what he's going to show you here is the reason why the population has grown. You can kind of see it in this like little chart right here. The reason why the population has grown so much is not because people are having more children. It's because more children are surviving, right? So back in 1800, a typical family may have had 6 children, and 4 of those children would not survive past the age of like 5. By the 20th century, most families might have 5 children, and now 4 of them are surviving. So it's not that there's more babies being born, it's that more of them are surviving. And the other key piece here that he talks about is right in this section here. So he's kind of like building these blocks. And so essentially you've got each of these blocks accounts for 1 billion people. And so the way he's building these blocks, he's got, okay, so let's say you've got, the other piece, the other piece that I forgot to mention here. So basically what's happened, I'm trying to like go back to this because it's literally like the best explanation of this stuff. So what we've hit, and we hit this around the year 2000, is we hit something called peak child. So there's about 2 billion children in the world, and that's leveled now. It will stay at 2 billion children in the world. So the number of children is not increasing. So the number of children is not increasing. And then he kind of...
Doris was born is when the world entered into the age...
Then he talks about, you can see it in the back, right? So if you've got the population growth going like this, but children are level, we're always having 2 billion children, where are all those people coming from? And so this is when he starts to use the blocks. So he says, okay, there's 2 blocks, and let's say each block is 1 billion. So in the bottom, you have 2 billion children. And then you've got another 2 billion people from ages 15 to 30. And then he keeps building them, right? So keep building them, keep building them. The people at the top, on the topmost point of, this is the best screenshot here. So 2 billion children here, 2 billion people above that. Then you've got about 1 billion people above that, 1 billion people above that, if you keep doing like age chunks. And so eventually all the people at the top, right, the topmost block will die. These are the oldest of the population. And then 2 billion more are born, right? And so they get kind of put at the bottom. Then the next top part dies, 2 billion more are born. And you just keep going. And so eventually,
this big inevitable fill up of adults, which will happen just when the large young generations grow up. Now, there's one more detail, which is good news for the older one.
So essentially, you've got 2 billion children right? And it keeps going. And now people are living longer. So the way the population is growing, so the way we have this, why this chart exists is because people are living longer. There are more adults, right? So more children are then growing up and surviving into adulthood. And then beyond that, the actual life expectancy has increased. So let me look at some of these questions here. And make sure if you have a question, it's the easiest if you type it into the actual like ask a question. And so let me post this one as a question. You can just put it over it. Is that because of the children mortality and birth rate? So it's because of children mortality rate, right? So the birth rate is not changing, right? So like, it's not that there's more children being born, it's that more children are surviving, right? So that mortality rate is decreasing. And because of that, what we're seeing is just more adults. So this is the reason why I love this, this documentary, because it just, oops, that's AP World. Okay, because these blocks show that, right? So right before, you can see, this is what it looks like. Come on.
We are here on top.
So this is what it might look like right now, right? So we've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 billion people. That's what the world kind of looks like right now. You've got 2 billion children, 2 billion above that, and then about 1 billion in each age group above that. But as time goes on, the top blocks will die, and then 2 more billion will be born. And so that means that in 50 years, there's more adults than there are today. That's why it goes up. All right, done answering. Okay. How would this look as a population pyramid? So I can show you again the population pyramid of the world, but population pyramid also, it shows you the demographic breakdown of, I see what you mean. Okay, so I'll show you the population pyramid of the world after. Is the reason why we have 2 billion children at a constant rate because of life expectancy. It's the reason why we have 2 billion children that's constant is partially related to life expectancy, but it's more specifically related to like infant mortality rate, right? So the fact that people are going to live longer accounts for this last block. So by the end, you see how it's like even, and then he actually adds one more on there.
Increasing the length of life.
Here we go.
We have 3 billion.
Oh, so annoying.
So we have to add 1 billion.
Right. So this is how we get to 11 billion. So for Hans Rosling, his theory is essentially that there will be 11 billion people, and that is where we'll sort of cap off, right? So that this will continue, and then you can see like right around 11, where 11 would be, is sort of where it levels off. So this is his theory of it. And so that life expectancy piece is that top one. So more people will live longer than they ever have before, which accounts for some of the population growth. But the fact that people live longer here, it's these adults here, that has more to do with medicine and opportunities, education, economics. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Oh, thank you for that population pyramid. That is useful. Okay. All right. So going forward into the DTM. So again, this is called Don't Panic. And he kind of goes more into a lot of these things. And I just find it really easy to understand the way that he explains it. Population can be confusing, and it's just kind of nice. So, all right. So talking about the DTM, this is like what we're mostly going to focus on today. We're just going to kind of go through each stage and look at a case study for each one. So essentially what the DTM is, this is the demographic transition model. It's doing a few things, and it's specifically not doing a few things. Okay, so the DTM will tell you the birth rate and the death rate based on like historical trends and economic development. So all these stages are referring to like where a country would be in their population growth as it relates to economic growth, essentially, right? So we're looking specifically at kind of like a history of trends. It's not, it doesn't tell you the length of each stage, right? Like there's a lot of reasons why a country goes from stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4. Some countries spend longer in each stage than others. Some have moved quickly. It doesn't tell us the length. It doesn't tell us why. It also doesn't take into account migrations. So even though a country might be on this graph having like a population that's steady, they might actually be increasing their population because of migrations. So this doesn't take that into account at all. So it's important to know, what information you get from this and then what information you don't. So just to explain through the lines here. So the yellow one is referring to birth rate, right? So this is just the actual number of people that are being born. The green line is death rate, right? And so then this in between here, this would be your natural increase, right? So it's to figure out the natural increase. Does anyone know the actual, let's see. Does anyone know what's the formula for natural increase rate? What unit is the y-axis in? The y-axis is in, I'm not even sure. I think it's in, I'm not sure the exact numbers. I think it might be millions, but I think ultimately it's just number of people, right? So you don't need to know the actual numbers of people, but number of people, and this is showing the different stages. And then the blue one is the actual total population, right? So, an overall look of this is that in a country that goes through these stages, the birth rate and the death rate start out high. They both will eventually decrease. Once they decrease, that's when population goes up, right? That's kind of like your overall explanation. All right, and so let's go through each stage. And so we'll talk about each stage, and then we'll talk about an example of each one. And just remember, any questions you have, pop them in the questions. Okay, so stage 1, this is most of the world was in stage 1 before the Industrial Revolution. And today, not a single country is in stage 1. So there are no more countries that are there. This was more connected to foraging societies, right? This is really pre-industrial. And after that, you don't have this anymore because industrialization changes everything. So even countries today that are still developing, they have still already developed beyond this stage. So nobody's really here anymore. And so basically what happens in stage 1, though, is that you have really high birth rates and really high death rates. So the population is not going to increase that much, right? So it's going to stay pretty steady because you have about the same number of people dying as you do being born. And so if the population changes at all, it's because of war or famine, but it's not going to change all that much. It's going to stay pretty steady. Okay, so in terms of a case study for this, we don't have one because there is no country that is in this stage now. But it's kind of crazy though that it's not that long ago. Almost all countries were in stage 1 before the 1700s, and now we have none. I mean, that's a lot of change in not that long of time. I know the 1700s feels like forever ago, but relatively it's not, right? Are the stages always going to stay the same? So yeah, I mean, as far as we know, maybe there'll be, obviously now we have stage 5 and maybe there's a stage 6 and a stage 7, and we don't even know that far into the future because we don't know how our population is going to be affected. And so, it could change a little bit, but this is kind of how things are. All right, stage 2. So going forward into the graph, in stage 2, this is kind of, there's a lot going on here. So in stage 2, this is where a lot of developing countries are today. So when you think of third world countries, so we don't really talk about third world versus first world, second world anymore. Those terms were more specific about the Cold War. but we talk about as developing countries. So most developing countries are in stage 2. They've got high birth rates, right? But there is better medicine, right? These countries do have industrialized, features. They do have better medicine. So that will lower the death rate. So you can see the death rate is the first to fall. And here is where it's falling a lot. It falls really fast. More people will survive, especially children. More children will survive. So because now you have a super high birth rate and a much lower death rate, now you have the total population will increase really quickly, right? So this is the fastest population growth stage of any of them. Like the population will increase the most here. And so some examples of countries where this exists are states in sub-Saharan Africa, right? So that's underneath the Saharan desert. You've got like other places, Guatemala, Palestine, Yemen, Afghanistan. I'm going to look specifically at Afghanistan for a second. So Afghanistan actually has one of the highest rates of child mortality in the world. So like 1 out of 10 children in Afghanistan don't live past the age of 5, which is pretty intense, right? And so even though the death rate has decreased overall, it's relatively high for children, which means that you also will have higher birth rates because, if your children are not surviving, you have more children. And so another reason why the birth rates are high is really related to poor healthcare and limited access to education. So the more opportunities that women have, the more freedoms that women have, the more education that women have, the less likely they are to have a lot of children. So birth rates are very much connected to women's equality. In Afghanistan, women don't have a lot of access to these, contraceptives or education or different opportunities. And so the birth rate remains really high. The death rate has decreased, and it's mostly because of medicine. So even though Afghanistan has been in wars, a lot of wars for the last several decades, they still have decreased the death rate because of medicine. And so in a country that's in stage 2, their population is increasing really fast. And that's not always a good thing, right? So typically countries in stage 2 also don't have a lot of infrastructure and, the means to really support all of those people. And so what you have is, rapidly growing population that can't sustain itself. And so if this continues, by 2039, the population of Afghanistan will double because of this. And so the trick for Afghanistan now is to decrease the birth rate, and that will help curb that. All right, let me just check here for any questions. How come the yellow line? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's hard. It's tough out there. Okay, so stage 3. So in stage 3, what you have in stage 3 is, economic status is better in countries that are in stage 3. So remember, for a country in stage 2, the way to get out of that stage is to decrease the birth rate. And so the ways to do that is to have better, a better economy, more access to education, more access to contraceptives. So because of that, in stage 3, this is when you can see the yellow line now is decreasing. So the death rate, right, it's declining a bit, but it's not declining as much. It's kind of leveling off. And that's because they still have access to medicine and even better medicine. Then the birth rate will just totally fall because of opportunities, right? That's like the key. Like if you remember one thing from the DTM, it's like the, birth rate and opportunities and education and medicine are all connected. And so in a country in stage 3, you still have a population that's growing because you still have more people being born than are dying, but it's not growing as quickly, right? This is a much steeper cliff than this one. It's still growing, but not as fast. So it's leveling off a bit. Some of the countries that would be in this stage would be like Botswana, Colombia, India. I got a bunch listed on the bottom. South Africa, Mexico, and the UAE would be involved in here. And then remember, this doesn't include migration. So some of these countries have a lot of migrants coming in or out. And so that can affect the population growth, but this is talking about just natural increase. So let's focus on Morocco really quick. Morocco is a country that gained its independence in the 20th century. And since they did that, they've had like relatively stable politics, society, economy. And so because things stabilized and they were able to, grow, and they don't have a lot of violence, so they do have, education opportunities. Women, the actual fertility rate has decreased. So it's around like 2.7 now in Morocco. And that's huge. And so that's exactly what you need to be in this point. Life expectancy has even increased. So just since 1980, life expectancy in Morocco has increased by 20 years. That's insane. That's just like a crazy stat. So you can see here, that's in stage 3, things are kind of leveling off. The biggest difference for stage 3 is education. The biggest difference for stage 2 is medicine. All right, stage 4. So most developed countries today that have a lot of education, that have healthcare, that have opportunities for women, most developed countries are in stage 4. So these countries, the birth rate and the death rates have really stabilized over time, right? So you can see that you still have a birth rate that's falling, but for the most part, it's stabilizing. The population growth itself is also, becoming relatively stable. It's still growing a bit, but it's stabilizing. So the countries that are in this one are ones that I think, you'd expect to like be together, right? So you've got Argentina, Australia, Canada, China, United States, Brazil. All of these countries are in stage 4. And so a quick little case study on Argentina. I actually was reading a little bit about Argentina today, just because it's very interesting. So Argentina went from, they industrialized like fairly early compared to other like South American societies because of their like colonial history. And so after they industrialized, cities grew really fast in Argentina. A lot of people moved to the cities. Cities tend to have lower fertility rates than rural areas. Some of that is just based on opportunities, right? You have more education. So all those things we talked about what lowers fertility rates are all true in cities. And the other thing is you just have less space, right? So you don't, people live in smaller homes. And so that is like part of the reason why Argentina was able to get to stage 4. But, now they kind of went through those earlier stages faster because they urbanized so quickly. And so another thing with Argentina is that the total population is still increasing because the birth rate is still a bit higher than the death rate, but it's leveled off a bit. And then the last thing is that, and I was trying to read more about this, but I just learned this today, that gender discrimination was outlawed in Argentina in 1869 as part of their civil codes. Kind of interesting, I don't know, fun fact. And so because of that, women in Argentina were able to access more education, more rights, more opportunities, more contraceptives, and therefore fertility rates were lower. And so Argentina was able to get to stage 4. It's kind of an outlier in South America because of these factors. So that would be a case study for stage 4. So the last one is stage 5. And there's a question mark because stage 5 doesn't truly exist yet. Like, we're not really sure. We don't have any countries we have countries that would fit the model for stage 5. But we don't really have too much data surrounding this. And this will just take time, right? We just need more time, more data to see what happens. You can kind of see like these question marks at the end because we just don't know like where those lines will head. We can guess, we can make predictions, but we don't know yet. And so stage 5 means that the fertility rates are lower than 2. and that the elderly population is going to grow faster than the young population. So, for example, if you have, you can see here, less people are being born than are dying, right? So you have the population more people are dying than are being born. So the population is actually decreasing. So you can see what's happening to this line here. So some of the countries in Eastern Europe, Japan is another one that is experiencing this. And I'm going to talk a little about Germany. Germany has, their death rates have actually been higher than their birth rates since 1972. The only difference with Germany, and this isn't shown in the DTM, is that their population actually isn't declining because of migration, because a lot of people have moved to Germany in the last several decades. And so because of that, their population has not declined, and I think has actually increased. And so it doesn't totally fit that. But in terms of like, an actual country being in stage 5, that would be a good example. Another one is Japan. So Japan, let's see. Yeah, so Japan, there are some interesting articles about schools in Japan, especially in rural areas where there just aren't a lot of kids. Like you literally have, elementary schools in different parts of Japan, in rural Japan especially, that have like 6 kids in the whole school. So you have more elderly people that live in that area than you have children. And so it just poses like totally different problems, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's not that it's just like better for a country to be like, it's not like the higher the stage, the better off you are. It depends on like how you're analyzing it. Okay, so let's see. All right, so we got some questions. What is infant mortality rate? Infant mortality rate is the number of children that don't live past, I'm not sure what the exact age is, but it's like the number of children that die before they're of age, maybe age 5. Are contraceptives a positive or negative thing for a population? So contraceptives will decrease the birth rates, right? And so the problem with a society that birth rates are too high is that what we talked about last week with population pyramids is that if you don't have enough people in that society that can like work, if you have more people who are young and who are old than who are economically active, that's a problem, right? That's called like dependency ratio. And so in order to keep that balanced, you need to curb the birth rates. And so contraceptives in that sense are a good thing, right? So it also in general allows women to have more rights and to have more opportunities. So contraceptives are a positive thing. What stage would China be in? Since their population is affected heavily by things such as the one-child policy, for sure. Let's see. I think that China is in stage 4. And I think the reason why they have, that's like the fact that they have their birth rates have fallen so much are like they did it, right? So like yeah, exactly. Antinatalists. So for a country to like have their birth rate fall, it can happen because of gender equality or like the country itself like implemented laws. And so China is an example of that with one-child policy, which is now creating other issues where you have a gender imbalance, right? Because China has emphasized male children. If you only have one, it's better to have a male. And so now there's too many men. All right. What is the dependence? So the dependency ratio is the number of like dependents that rely on people who are working. So dependents are ages, 0 to, 18, 15, and then the older generation as well. So the young and the old depend on all the people in the middle to work and to provide for them. And so if you have more people that are young and old, that makes it really difficult in that society. All right. So stage 5 has question marks because we just don't know a lot about it, right? It's like relatively new in terms of when we have, of like the countries that we say are in stage 5 are like very recently in stage 5. So it's not like we have a lot of data to really show this. That's important there, right? Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see. I'm gonna go back to just like the first slide. So this whole thing is up. All right, so if you guys have any other questions about the DTM, drop them in the questions. And, I'll spend some time just like making sure population is like solid. This is a good unit to feel good about, Okay. All right, let's take a look at these new questions. Is this saved later so I can review it? Yes, this will be, the replay will be here as soon as you're done. How am I going to use this when I get older? So, I mean, that's a fair question. So I'm going to click here. All right, so why learn anything about human geography? You don't have to be a geographer to care about this, right? So when you think about, there's so much in the world that happens, right? There's so much, there's a lot going on, right? And to understand why things are the way they are, you can do a lot of that through understanding geography, right? And it's not just like where things are, which, by the way, you really should learn where things are. Like start memorizing countries ASAP, because just knowing where in the world these are is going to really help you on your exam. But in general, knowing where things are really helps you, like someone said, become a more well-rounded person, right? It helps you to understand like why countries have the issues that they do. It helps you to understand like why we should know, why, helps you make decisions about like how you feel about government and government's role in different things and society and all these different, they're really complicated, right? And so like this helps to explain like where we're going and where we've been. And so that would be my thing. Yeah, you shouldn't just think of all your classes as like, why would I need this? I don't want to be a professional in this subject. Or like most people aren't professionals in those subjects. Like most people don't work as historians, as, English literature professors. Like most people don't work in that exact field, but those fields help them across the board. They help you analyze, they help you understand the world. They just help you like be a smarter person so that you can have these conversations. Okay, how would I answer a question about the DTM on the exam? So the way that they'll ask you about the DTM on the exam is they might just like straight up ask you. And I actually had an FRQ at the end here, but I'm not gonna have time to like do the whole thing. This is an example. This is 2017 exam. This is kind of the way that they would do it. This is like one example. Is they're not like specifically asking you about the DTM, but the same process that you use to understand that you need here. So, it says identify the world region on the map with the highest rates of natural increase. So you got to know what natural increase is, but also you just have to know how to read a map here, right? So highest rates would be here. So you can identify, sub-Saharan Africa as the answer to A. But then it says like, using the region identified in part A, explain 3 factors that contribute to high population growth rates. So then it's saying, okay, if you're going to talk about sub-Saharan Africa, why is the population growing so much there? And so now that becomes easy because that's more of like, what we just talked about. You have high population growth there because you have a high infant mortality rate. You have, a relatively high death rate. Like you can just kind of go through these different answers. There are other FRQs that would ask you, let's see. There are FRQs that would actually ask you, like, what stage would this country be in? And that would, you'd literally just have to know, you just got to know the actual stages at that point. All right, ask question. Come on. Okay. All right. All right. So any other questions about population? So next Monday, I'm going to be talking about migration. So this is when we're moving away from population. Let's see. But yeah, this would be, yeah, there you go. All right, one more question. How do you find natural increase on a map? Well, you don't unless it's actually like shown on the map. So on this map, they're giving you a key. So this map is like a chart. So it's saying this is the rate of natural increase in 2014, and so it's just has them all shaded. And someone else asked a question, by the way, of like which countries should I know? And if you know, I don't know how to like specifically phrase this, but I actually, what I'll do is I'll start posting some of the countries that you should start memorizing, but memorize like the most important ones. Like, I've got a map here. If you pick the historically most important, so like things happened there that were important, the most like economically powerful, most politically powerful, at least a few in each region, then you're in a good spot. And on the test, they're never going to ask you, label this country. But if you know the country, you're just like in a way better spot. Right, like this one, it's asking you about sub-Saharan Africa. So if you know some of the countries there, you can start talking about them. And it's just really useful. Or like know that this is Russia. And like, it sounds easy, but a lot of students don't know this. So you had to know Japan and Germany. Oh yeah, that's true. You did. You literally had to say which country is this. So that does happen. For the FRQ, that was yeah. Okay. All right, y'all. So you can add more questions there if you have them. Yep, Japan and Germany are stage 5. And just so that you know, so we've been doing these live events in the month of September, and we've been doing them as like free for everyone. But going forward, the actual live session and all the replays and all the things that that we're adding inside of Fiveable, this stuff is no longer free in October. But tonight is like the last day for the like fall early bird special. So some of you guys are already part of Fiveable. A lot of people are. I think there's like, I just checked today, it was like 3,300 students are signed up for Fiveable across our 9 different subjects. And so the button is just right below me. It says replays and future live sessions. And it's $15 right now for a whole year of live reviews for human geography, right? And so for you guys, this might be the only class that you're taking. And I'm going to be live every Monday. And then in May, I'm going to be live a lot more times. And also in December too. So I'm going to help you guys pass your final in class. And then I'm going to help you pass the actual exam. So we're live almost every day in May, or not every day in May, every day the week of the exam, actually helping you pass these tests. So AP Lang, we have a bunch of different subjects. We have both English, we have all 3 histories, and we have biology, psychology, and stats, and human geography. And so it's $15, and it's $15 until midnight tonight, and that's midnight, probably like Pacific Coast time. But yeah, and then as of October, it's going to go up. It's going up because we are going to have to start hiring more teachers to be live for all the students that are signed up. Then in November, it will go up again. In December, it will go up again. So the price of Fiveable goes up all year because, one, like, the longer you're with Fiveable, the more likely you are to pass this exam. That's been true from last year. So, Dylan, you're killing me here. So if you join now, you're more likely to pass the exam because you have access to all these things. So right now it's $15, and that includes an entire year worth of live sessions. That's like 40 or more sessions that you'll have all of. You'll have all the replays and everything. And so it's worth considering because $15 is not that expensive, like relatively, especially when you pass this exam. You can save like $4,000 on college credits. And trust me, I'm sitting on like $90,000 of student loans, and I'm not even exaggerating. You for sure don't want to be me. So if I could go back to my freshman year of high school and take more AP exams and just pass, like, it's not, it's like one test to save that much. I don't know. It's just, I highly recommend it. So anyways, the link is there. It's fiveable.me/live. And I'll be here every Monday going through everything you need to know and then answering all your questions as well. So there's a few more questions here. I've got a few more minutes. Let's see, I already answered that one. Is this replay going to be free? No. So all the replays are only for Fiveable members. So you have to join to be able to access all the replays. And at this point now, there's already 2 replays up for human geography, and then this will be the 3rd. And then we're going to keep going and adding and adding and adding, and then also doing all kinds of other like special events just for Fiveable members. The chart in general helps us see the differences in the rates for, yeah. So like the DTM is just to see birth rates and death rates, essentially. Okay. Okay. So anyways, that's the plug for Fiveable. Beyond that, we'll be around to help you guys with AP exams all throughout the year. But tonight is the cheapest that Fiveable will be for the rest of the year. And if you think ahead to your future self, when you're freaking out before the exam, it's going to cost a lot more then. So you can save yourself a lot of stress and money by joining now. So fiveable.me/live, and that's about it. So next week, for those of you that join, we'll be talking about migrations, talking about the causes of migrations and the effects of migrations, and that's about it. So one other thing, the AP World live streams are at 8, so it's in 7 minutes. One other question I just want to ask you really quick. I had some requests for this, and I just want to like gauge interest. So how interested would you be in any kind of live sessions, not a paid one, just like live sessions about current events? Like, are your teachers talking about what's going on? Are they not? Because I'm not working at a school. It's a lot easier for me to like get in there and talk about things than it is for a teacher at a school, because there's a lot more like rules, and they have to be worried about parents, and I don't. So I'm just curious from you, like, if I had a session this week, let's say Wednesday night, Thursday night, straight up about Kavanaugh, about everything that happened, about what went down last week in those 2 days and all the days before that, it would be free. That one would be free. And it was just like, let's talk about this. I can't guarantee that people won't join and, say things, and it's going to be tough, and it's not easy even for me to talk about because I'm a woman, and it will be difficult. But if that's something that you guys are interested in, I just feel like, you guys are the future, and I want to make sure that you're informed on what's going on, and just like the general processes, right? Like, how does a judge get confirmed? How has this happened before? Why is this time different than last time? Like, why is what happened last week so important? Right. So like, I feel like, yeah, I'd like to know more about what's going on. I feel like I'm so caught up in school, I don't have time to stay informed. That's a really good point. And so, yeah, so I'm really thinking about it, and I think I probably will. But it's just, it stresses me out to even go live on it. But if I do, you'll get an email from me. Okay. So stay on our email list. I'm going to email you guys tonight, remind you about what the link is to sign up. If you hit unsubscribe, then you're never going to get an email from me again. But no, the current events would be free. I wouldn't charge for that. Like, what we're charging for is because we're paying teachers to go live and to teach you, just like your school pays teachers. This is just a little bit extra. So instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a tutor, you get $15 for all year. So that's the whole idea with Fiveable. But with current events, it's just like, I'm someone who is connected to all these students across the world, and I could teach you what's happening in the world, just as like an informed citizen. And I think, yeah, so that's what I want to do. Would it just be straight facts from you or your opinions? I mean, it would be factual, but I'm a human, so I'm going to give my opinions as well. But it's not like in a way that I'm not trying to get you to believe something. It's just like, here's what it is. All right. So I got to bounce. I'm going to go to the AP World session in a second. But thank you so much for all your great questions tonight. Today was awesome. So you guys did a great job. And I will email you with information about a current event session. Dope. Peace out.